Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast, Cover to Cover for Antioch Christian Church. My name is Carl, and I'm one of the pastors here at Antioch. Primarily, I get the good pleasure of being the campus pastor up in Oelwein. I'm joined by my good friend, Pastor Jason Southward, who's our youth champion and now also children's champion. Just an all-around great dude. Kids, youth, everybody, just a fantastic guy.
Stuff,
it's good to have a conversation with you. So,
yeah.
If you remember, if you joined in last week, Skylar and I were talking about Exodus chapter 4 and 5. And so today, what we're going to do, let's just get it out of the way. You and I both work with youth at times. Today we're in Exodus 6, 7.
6 and 7.
Yeah, all the stuff. But we're actually not going to go all the way through chapter 7 because the last part of chapter 7 starts dealing with the plagues. And so we're going to leave that for the following weeks. So the primary thing we're going to kind of get into, at least in the early part of chapter 6, this kind of sets the tone, even as Pastor Jason Ishmael is talking about this out of slavery and into promise, right? As Moses going back to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt and lead them towards the promised land. The correlation and the connection for us application-wise, moving in this New Testament, New Covenant era that we still live in this idea of God promising deliverance, the way this works in our life is moving us away from our bondage to slavery to sin and into freedom through Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that's how we make that cool connection, Old Testament, New Testament, moving forward. So I just kind of want to lay that as a foundational thing, and then kind of pitch it to you, my friend, and say what kind of jumps out at you as we get into chapter 6.
Yeah. No, I mean, as we look at chapter 6, the first thing you see is like God is reminding them who he is again. Like, I am the Lord. And one of the things in that he does, again, is he brings up his covenant promise to his people. He reminds them, like, he made the promise to Abraham, Isaac, to Jacob, and I love the fact that he gets into like these 7 I will statements, like following right after that in verses 6 through 8. And I mean, ultimately, like 7 is like the perfect number, right? Like, and so we get like he literally brings in this like perfection into it, which also, like, when you look at the promises that he makes right there, leads us to that conversation that you were just talking about, like the thing that we get to watch how God uses his promises here, and we are actually getting to experience a lot of those promises on this side. And so, like, the deliverance of his people were all these things that he's saying, like, I promise to do all of these things, and I'm going to deliver my people. And so we see in there, like, they deliver you from slavery, free you from bondage, redeem you with power, take you as my people, be your God, bring you into the land, and then give you as a possession. So like we get to see the redemptive power of Jesus in this, and it's the same redemptive experience that we get to have now. So I just think it's awesome how this thing starts and just the framework that he puts into it there.
Right. And God continues to reveal who he is, right? Because in the earlier chapters, like Skylar and I were talking last week, Moses has some insecurity. I can't really do this. I don't speak very well. Hey, can you send my brother Aaron with me? Give me a little confidence or courage, or just have at least a partner in crime for this task you've called me to. And then God provides, and God says, I'm going to equip you. God says, I will help you. I will be with you. But I appreciate what you bring out, because he says, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord. I will bring you out. I will free you, right? I will take you as my own people. I will be your God. Man, he's putting a stamp on them. I am your God, and I will help you. I will deliver you. And man, we can take that into our modern day lives. It's the same thing. God wants to be our God. Now, we need to choose him back, right? He doesn't robotically force us to follow him, but he's offering us the same kind of relationship. I want to be your God. I can free you from the slavery and addiction and to sin that you may have or whatever's going on in your life. I want to deliver you. And it's this exact same God that we pray to and talk with, same God who delivered the Israelites, and the same powers at work today.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. Like, the first thing that happens is Moses is like having these conversations, because that's like the Lord saying, go tell this to my people. I'm going to do all these things. I promise I'll do it all. And then the moment he goes to tell all these people, like all of a sudden things get harder for the people, and they like start to like be mad at Moses, right? For like their God is going to deliver them, and they're like, well, now things are harder for us. Thanks a lot, right? Yeah. In the midst of it, and so like Moses gets discouraged as he's trying to deliver this message to the people, and I think like that's us, right? Like, how often do we talk to people who like we're trying to bring the message of the gospel to them, and they reject and they reject and they reject it, and like then we walk away discouraged, and it's just like that's part of the process of all of this. And like we can look at some of this and be like, man, no, like even like Moses being discouraged by that, like that's a thing that has been felt all throughout. But like he kept that process going. He kept being faithful, and then all of a sudden he gets to be the person who leads them out into that. So I just think it's really cool that the imagery in that.
Sure, and I think that again that contextualizes to our modern day walk with Jesus. I mean, again, you and I both spend a lot of time working with youth, and depending on what week we're in the course of the year, but we're just kind of finishing up one of these studies called Yo-Yo, right? Following Jesus is not a straight line. You know, again, in a walk of faith, anyone's walk of faith, there's ups, there's downs, there's these mountaintop experiences, there's these valley experiences, and we've actually spent time, I'm actually going to do some work in this tomorrow night talking about Moses, you know, about the idea that he's had mountaintop experiences, grew up in the palace, right? Had a pretty bougie upbringing.
Yep.
And then boom, he has that issue. He kills the guy, and all of a sudden he's down in the valley, and he spends 40 years in the wilderness before God calls him to even do this in the first place. And now he's kind of in a low spot.
Yeah.
And then boom, then God calls him, and he's kind of moving back up. And then now he has to work with these kind of obstinate Israelites. And it's the same thing, that it's not just a straight line, that everything just becomes easy peasy when you decide to follow God.
Yeah.
And so you have up moments, you have down moments, and that's just the normal walk of faith. And so again, I think that's a fun way to contextualize this, because again, a lot of people look at the Old Testament as like, man, I can't connect to that. That's just a dusty old history book. Where do I fit? Oh my gosh, they're just the same kind of people we are. Yeah. You know, we have days where things go well, even days when we follow God, it goes well. Then there's days we try to follow God and it still doesn't go well. You know, that's just the normal ebb and flow up and down of the Christian walk. And we can even see that in, you know, all the way back in the Old Testament and what Moses is dealing with. But you're right, as the leader, how easy even for us, we go right back down the valley because, man, they're not listening to us, they're not following you, and then we get discouraged.
Yeah, we get discouraged, we start to doubt, we have those insecurities that pop up in us, like, maybe I didn't say it right, maybe I didn't do it right, like maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not the right person for this. And so like we can let those things creep in, but like we need to be reminded of the call and the promises of God that he just reminded them of again. And so it's just good to be reminded of those things.
Yeah. I don't know if this strikes a familiar chord with you, but like a lot of times if things are going bad, I put the blame on myself. Mm-hmm. I take too much ownership, and God's like, it's not Carl will free you. Carl will be it's I will be.
Right.
And sometimes in leadership, we take too much on ourselves, and then we wonder why things go awry. Well, I tried to do a little bit too much instead of maybe trusting a little more on God and believing in his promises and how he's going to kind of bring us through that.
Yeah.
And so what else jumps out at you?
I mean, I think it kind of transitions into like the genealogy piece from there, right? And so like as we look at genealogies, oftentimes we're like, man, this is like some boring stuff.
Super boring.
Right?
I don't.
Why
so
is this
and so
here?
begot so and so
Like,
begot so and so.
What is going on? Why do we have all these names that none of us can pronounce?
Yeah.
But like as we look at the genealogies, though, like we are reminded of several things. I think, like one, like these are real people that like they can be tracked in history. Like there's so much about it that people, I think, oftentimes just look at it as like, oh, this is just the story of this person or this character or whatever. But no, like, these are like real people that you can track all the way down into the lineage of Jesus, right? Yep. And so like it's just like, one, it's the fact that they're real people. Two, it's like the faithfulness of God from generation to generation to generation. And again, it just brings back the lineage piece. It's like God was faithful consistently when we were rebellious people and rebellious in nature. Like, but you just watched his faithfulness and his continued remembrance of his promises to his people. Mm-hmm.
What I love, the notation I kind of have, some underlines I have in my Bible when it comes to this genealogy, you know, kind of in the middle part of chapter 6. How did I write my notes? God notices and pays attention to everyone. Mm-hmm. There's nobody so obscure that God does not have his fingerprint on you. And so sometimes I just even marvel at, you know, like fine, the sons of Reuben. Okay, Reuben, I understand. I know that name from Genesis, okay? But there's a lot of names in this chunk of genealogy. I have no idea who they are. I may even have read their name before. Yeah. But what it affirms to me is God pays attention to everybody. And even though that there's not necessarily some new Bible being written with all of our journeys and all of our exploits in modern day life, rest assured God has a stamp and his fingerprint on our lives and our heart as well, and he pays attention to everybody. And I think that's important because, man, how many people do you bump into? How many people do I bump into? I know Skylar as well, that just feel like, man, God's forgotten about me. I don't think God pays attention to me. I've done so much wrong. I've done too many bad things. I bet God has just kind of wiped the slate clean and just doesn't even pay attention to him. Like, absolutely not. these are sinful, mistake-ridden people as well, and yet God loves them enough. They're actually in the scriptures, and God has that mark on everyone's heart, and nobody's too far gone. Nobody is screwed up so badly that God says, you know what, I'm just going to erase you. No.
Right.
He knows exactly who you are and pays attention to everybody. And I think that's a really cool message of hope, because again, it's a big, frustrating, sometimes really dark world, and it's really easy to feel lost and that nobody notices me, nobody pays attention to me, nobody cares about me. And here God's going, no. I know exactly who you are because I created you, and you're actually created in my image.
Yeah.
And I love that, and that just shows his faithfulness and how big his love is for us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. Keep going. What else you got? I know that's kind of a quick run through the early part of chapter 6.
Yeah.
But what else you got for your notes?
Again, jumping into 7, it's the place where like Aaron is like actually given as the person to speak for Moses. And again, I think you guys talked about it even in the last episode of like, I don't really know exactly where it is that
what Aaron actually said
to him. But like one of the things that you see is just God continuing to like build Moses up in this. Because he says like Moses will be like God to Pharaoh and to them, and so he did give him Moses, and I think that a lot of us in life need somebody alongside of us to build us up, to encourage us, to like give us confidence. But then like he literally has God telling him like you will be like God to these people, and how you bring this and how you establish this chain of communication and all these different things, and so and then he starts to bring in like the first of like the miracle things that happen with Pharaoh, with the throwing down of the staff, and where Aaron's staff becomes a snake, and then they bring in somebody and they do their little witchcraft stuff or whatever it is, and like theirs also become snakes. And so one of the things that I think I recognize in that is like we truly do like we're dabbling in a spiritual warfare that like has real power, and like sometimes I think we ignore that at times when you see that. So like obviously like we are on the winning side of this, and we see that even in that little miracle right there with the staff, where Aaron's staff swallows up the other staffs.
Yep.
But like I think that we can wrestle a little bit with like how we are in a spiritual warfare in that, and like it's powerful over here, and we can ignore that sometimes. But like when we see what we're called to do and the promises and the things that God gives us, we have the power to overcome all that stuff.
Right. And I think that's also the graciousness of God to provide Aaron. We can pick on Moses for saying, I can't do this. I don't speak well. I can get my brother to do it. We can pick on him all we want. But man, ministry all by yourself is difficult. It's sometimes far too much weight or burden to carry. I mean, yes, you want to honor God and follow what the call is you feel he's put on your life, but doing ministry alone is very, very difficult. So I love the fact that Aaron's with them, even just for the fact that they can go away going, man, Pharaoh, God was right. Pharaoh didn't listen to us. What do you think? They can just have a conversation, and there's encouragement in that. I appreciate that you bring out about the kind of the dark forces. It's really easy to gloss over, in my opinion, really easy to gloss over. Okay, Pharaoh, the most powerful dude, really almost on the planet at the time.
Yeah.
Right. But again, and the Egyptians worshipped a myriad of false gods. Okay, and when you're worshiping false gods, the devil's involved in that, Satan's involved in that, and there is a spiritual realm that is dark and is wrong and is anti-God, anti-Christ. And so it's easy to gloss over, that's just kind of a really weird Old Testament story, the Egyptians, King Tut, blah, blah, blah. But there's a reality to their worshiping false gods. And we see that today. We have false religions still at work today. And we can take confidence and, again, courage. God is bigger. God is more powerful. But it does take it takes some spiritual mettle to kind of stay on mission for the Lord when you're up against, not just people that are against God, but maybe even empowered by some darkness, in the spiritual realm that, of course, do not want Christ to win, but Christ has already won because of the cross. But I think it's an easy thing to gloss over that, man, there's definitely spiritual warfare at play here as well. So again, the reason I like that Aaron's with Moses is, man, he's just not at this all by himself.
Yeah.
And there's encouragement. And that's just as applicable today when we're in ministry. It's so much easier to do it with colleagues and trusted brothers and sisters that are also on mission and on fire for the Lord. You don't have to, what takeaway, you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Yes, we need our alone time with God, but man, launching into ministry, man, you need help. And there's
absolutely.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I think we can go back a little bit. I think I jumped past it, but like there's a piece that I think that Jason Ishmael actually addressed in some of the questions about this concept of like God hardening Pharaoh's heart.
Oh yeah.
That I think a lot of us have a really hard time with, right? Like how what does that mean? Like how is this how is this thing? Why would God do that? Is Pharaoh just a puppet to to God essentially? And like, man, just looking through that, and one, like, I think we can look at the character of God already up at this point and know that he's not a puppeteer, right? Like he's not someone who's going to do that. But I think like the more that I've done some different, readings and research on, how that was crafted and created was like, we look at Pharaoh where he was at, because even at the very end of this, it says that Pharaoh's heart became hard again, even after the miracle of Aaron's staff swallowing up the other two staffs.
He would not listen to them.
He would not listen to them. Yeah. And I think that when it says that God hardened Pharaoh's heart, it's this reckoning of recognizing that like where Pharaoh's heart was. He saw where Pharaoh's heart was. And almost to the point that it's like, God was like, I know the more I do, the harder his heart's going to get almost. You know what I'm saying? Like he knows where his heart is. He's already
predisposed. This is
correct.
This is the pattern. This is like, who he is.
The more I keep beating him in all these things, like the harder his heart's going to get. And so it's like, God's like, this, by doing this, it's going to harden his heart. By doing this, it's going to harden his heart. Like I know this, like this is
not that we ever get that stubborn.
No, never.
I'm never.
I would never
stubborn.
do that. No. But it's just so interesting. Like, I think sometimes we think it's like such an obvious thing. Like we're like, how can someone not believe because of X, Y, and Z? You know what I mean? And so like we get to a place where like, I don't understand how you can be at the place you're at. And we can get frustrated by that, and we can get mad almost at like, we've given them all of this evidence. They can give me no evidence. Like he's experiencing these things happening in front of him, and he's still just like, yeah, nah, that's not it. Yeah. Right. And so, but like, I just see in that, like, I think we can have or feel a certain way about it saying God hardened his heart. But I think ultimately we can also look as we continue in Exodus, and it shows over and over again that Pharaoh hardens his heart. And I think God is just recognizing that in Pharaoh.
Yeah. No, good point. I know you guys will kind of flesh this out a little more as we go into it, but this is one of those kind of sometimes stumbling blocks that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense till you slow down, take some time, unpack it, and kind of look for some other context, and again start to dig into that. But that's another reason why we're doing this podcast,
right? So
people can kind of tune in and go, I never thought of it that way. Or again, we're inviting questions, right into the podcast, or if you see us in the hallways at church, this is the culture of our church. I want to hesitate to say we're laid back. Like, no, we're very passionate about God's word. If it's in here, we teach it. If it's not, we don't. But you don't have to be stuffy, right? We want to invite questions. We want people to go, man, I don't understand this. Help me out. Hey, what do you think about this? And if they got a good point, I'm going to be like, holy cow, I never looked at it that way. We want to invite this conversation. And at least so far, that's the feedback I've been getting. Again, I work at the Old Wine campus, so I'm not down in the Marion and the metropolis that you guys, work at most weekends. But even up there, that's what I'm getting. They appreciate the conversational nature where it doesn't seem uber stuffy. And that's not me throwing shade at any other podcast. Sure. They have different goals and motives, but that's just kind of the personality of our church. We want people to feel welcome. We want to be able to come in and ask questions. It's okay. We're not going to judge you if you have some skepticism.
Yeah.
You find that all throughout the scriptures as well. And so one of the last things I want to bring out, at least for me, you may have some closing points. Again, I think it's an easy thing to gloss over. And again, I'm kind of staying above the idea of getting into the plagues, to leave that alone for when you guys get into the next, couple podcasts. But chapter 7, verse 7, Moses was 80 years old and Aaron was 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. How many of us think that to be in ministry, you got to be in your younger days? And I think just contextually, man, God is never done working through us if our heart stays soft. We're going to see what happens as Pharaoh's heart stays hard. Yeah. But man, what God can do with a soft heart that's willing and ready to listen to him at every phase of life, God can do mighty things. Remember, I said it last week on last week's podcast, God loves to do the miraculous through the mundane. Man, he does some amazing things through people that would not be considered kind of in the prime of their ministry years, and you don't even have to be in paid ministry to be effective for the kingdom. Yeah. So I love the fact that God tells us, man, Moses was 80 years old when he called him to go do this. Man, you're never done. being on mission for the Lord. And that's super encouraging to me, because at some point in time, those of us who aren't paid ministry, at some point in time, you kind of walk away, give it to the younger guy to step in there.
Sure.
But even at that, Jason's great phrase that he uses all the time, Pastor Jason, is like, man, we're not paid to be Christians. Mm-hmm. And that's so prophetic even. And so even if we're not in full-time ministry, we can do great things for the Lord. And that's super encouraging to me, because Moses' life is kind of 3 40-year chunks, right? This is now going to start like part 2 of 3. Well, the other ones will come a bit later. But man, I want people to be encouraged that no matter where you're at in life, whether you followed God early or not, God can still use you if you got a soft enough heart. And even again, wherever walk you're in, you can love God, you can love people, you can make disciples. And that's why we say it every week as we close the podcast. It's what we say at the close of our services, because that's really it. We're never done being on mission. So any closing thoughts before we sign out?
No, I love what you said there. I can think back to the people in my life who've had a great influence in my life, and some of the oldest people that I've been around, the most faithful people I've been around, have actually made some of the most drastic impacts in my life. And so, like, if those people would not have chose to be faithful and to still be ministers of the word, then I don't know where I'd be, honestly.
That's right.
At some level.
Where would we be?
I like that.
Great way to end.
Yeah.
There you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next week as they start getting into the plagues. But after that, love God, love people, make disciples. See you next time.